Medical Officer Eric Phillips and mission pilot Rabia Roga to a polar orbit from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, flying south over Miami, Cuba, and Panama, and just west of Ecuador and Peru.
Dragon SpaceX deorbit sequence start in 5 minutes.
Dragon copy.
And just to call out there that the deorbit sequence is going to be starting in a few minutes. Dragon successfully separated from Falcon 9's second stage about 10 minutes after liftoff and continued on its journey, successfully making the Fram2 the first crew to orbit the Earth at 90-degree inclination. And since then, the crew has been flying over Earth in a circular orbit, passing over the poles about every 46 minutes and 40 seconds, all while conducting research to help advance long-duration space exploration and capturing amazing views from space.
We really have seen some incredible views from Dragon's cameras, like this one from the vantage point looking out of the cupola from the camera inside of Dragon's nose cone. And of course, the crew have been sharing great updates on X over Starlink using Dragon's plug and placer system, a device that is linked to a Starlink terminal inside Dragon's trunk, which is then connected to a router, providing Wi-Fi for the crew. The placer is responsible for establishing and maintaining a laser communications link with Starlink satellites in orbit and providing high-speed internet for the crew to chat with family while in space, as well as share these incredible views and updates with all of us here on Earth, like these clips that Mission Commander Chun Wang posted on X.
Now, the crew is now wrapping up their final day on orbit in preparation for splashdown off the coast of California at 9:19 a.m. Pacific time, which is just about an hour from now. Preparations for the Fram2's return to Earth began yesterday when they initiated their first downhill phase burn, followed by the second downhill phase burn, which lowered Dragon's altitude in preparation for the deorbit burn.
Which is the one we just heard called out over the nets is coming up. So then following these two burns, the crew finished out a day of research and had their last dinner on board at about 2:50 a.m. Pacific. Just before 6 a.m. Pacific, the crew donned their spacesuits and made their final cabin preparations before they begin the last series of operations prior to splashdown, which of course all brings us to right now. We are currently working towards that deorbit burn, which is planned for 8:26 a.m. Pacific. So let's take a minute to meet the crew returning home from space.
I am that person that you meet in a really remote area carrying a film camera and a really heavy backpack full of camera equipment. That is me.
Right now I'm pursuing a PhD in Arctic robotics. So I give brains to autonomous boats in the Arctic, which basically means my background is research.
I work as a polar adventurer and guide. That essentially means that I'm taking myself and small teams, often customers, on expeditions typically to the North and South Poles.
I have dreaming about space stuff for quite some time, and even as young as in my teenagers, I spent so much time following the missions, trying to calculate the orbit, trajectory, and pay very close attention, like what's going on different online forums.
As a kid, I actually spent 5 years learning how to walk again and how to reuse my motor skills, like learning to walk, learning to run, learning to jump. And in that time period, I became space obsessed, and they were photographing the planet in 3D. I thought that was really cool.
Project that tied me most to space was leading a student satellite project, which was my heart and soul. It is funny because I'm going to launch before the satellite. So I look forward to seeing it come after me, I guess.
Looking back historically at how we all came together, we had this polar connection. We all have a connection to an archipelago of islands that is set in the Arctic Ocean called Svalbard.
I spent quite some time on Svalbard, the northernmost city or town one can live in and work from. Every crew have a certain connection to Svalbard.
Yannicka currently lives there, Chun has been there, Rabia and Chun have both joined me on expeditions there. So we kind of have this connective tissue, if you like. But it so happens that we're all bringing things into this mission that are critical. We will be doing something that is quintessential to humans, and that is seeing things with our own eyes.
Yeah, the Fram2 mission is like my baby. I planned and designed everything. I make a proposal. I think this is one of my life goals.
Such a talented and unique crew. And right now, our recovery ship Shannon is on station, standing by to recover Dragon. And Dragon is on an ascending track on its way to rendezvous with Shannon right now. And we are getting ready to, on the recovery ship, here for in a minute, but on your screen is actually the Dragon tracker, and you can actually see where the Fram2 crew is right now, getting ready to splash down in the Pacific Ocean this morning. So we are getting ready on the recovery ship today. Is Marissa, SpaceX's senior medical research engineer. She's preparing to receive, she is actually there. You can see her on the right hand of your screen on the recovery ship. This is really awesome views thanks to Starlink. Marissa, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Now, you joined us
absolutely. Great to be here.
You joined us a few days ago to talk about some research that the crew had planned. Now, what research were they able to complete on their mission?
Yeah, the crew's been extremely busy up there. They have accomplished all of their objectives, which is fantastic. What I was probably most excited about was the very first X-ray in space. The crew decided to pay homage to the very first X-ray ever taken, which was of a hand with a ring on it. And they took that same exact image, a hand with a ring on it, so we could actually compare them side by side. After that, the crew took a series of diagnostic images, including the forearm, the pelvis, the abdomen, and the chest. They demonstrated the capability of a DEXA scan, which is a way that we can monitor bone health. And then finally, they took some pictures of electronics, showing that we can use this as a diagnostic tool to understand what's wrong with hardware without having to pull it apart. So very successful first demonstration of the very first X-ray machine in space.
That is so awesome. I love that they gave an ode to the very first X-ray ever taken. In the launch program, you also shared some of the exercise-related research that they plan to do. How did that go?
Yeah, the exercise went great. We demonstrated blood flow restriction, which is the way to make exercise a bit more effective. But my favorite thing that we did with exercise was actually a demonstration where we asked the crew members to do their own experiment. So we said, you guys are the ones in microgravity. We're only here on Earth. Here's your hardware. Here's some exercise bands. You tell us what works. And we let them kind of play and explore. And I can't wait to chat with them when they come back to tell us what they learned.
That's awesome that they were able to experiment with their own exercise routines. I would love to hear what they were able to do. But they do have one last big piece of research ahead of them. They are coming back home, but can you tell us a little bit more about exiting the capsule unassisted when they get back?
Yes, we are going to attempt an unassisted exiting of the capsule, of the Dragon, as you said. And what we expect this to look like is the crews one at a time, getting out of their seats by themselves, taking off their footrests, bending down to grab their survival gear, which weighs about 35 pounds. And when you've been in space where everything is weightless, that might be quite heavy. Get it out of the hatch, take themselves out of the hatch, and walk down the hallway to resume their nominal medical health checks.
That's going to be really awesome to see, and we'll see how well the exercise helped them while they are in space for this unassisted exit. Now, once they complete egress, what's left for you, Marissa?
Yeah, well, the crew is splashing down, but their mission is far from over. After we get off of the ship, we're helicoptering to shore. We have an hour of balance and coordination testing. That is critical to helping us understand how our bodies readapt to Earth's environment. Then we put them as soon as possible into a portable MRI machine so we get an image of their brain. And why this is so important to do so early is because we actually want to know what their brain looks like while they're in space. We don't have the technology yet to put an MRI onto the Dragon capsule, but what we can do is get them an MRI as soon as they get back to Earth so we can get an idea of all of those changes that happen to the brain. Then, finally, the crew get to sleep for the night, but then we have 2 more days jam-packed with research. We'll be transferring to Houston to NASA Johnson Space Center, where there's a really rare high-resolution bone scanner that we're going to use to see if we can detect the earliest bone loss in crews. And then we have a 9-hour research day after that. So lots more to come, and just can't wait for the crew to splash down.
It sounds like you have a really exciting day and couple of days ahead of you. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today, Marissa.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As we touched on earlier, Dragon has a series of steps to complete before returning our crew home. First, Dragon will slew, or maneuver itself in a very careful turn, into the correct position to do the deorbit burn here in just a few minutes. Then it will use its forward bulkhead thrusters to perform the deorbit burn, which will put Dragon on a trajectory to return to Earth to our splashdown location off the coast of California. That deorbit burn is expected to last about 16 minutes once it starts.
Yeah, this will be the last time the forward Dracos, which are the 4 thrusters located on the top of the vehicle, will ignite. After the deorbit burn ends, the spacecraft will initiate separation of the claw mechanism.
After that, Dragon will jettison its trunk. The deorbit burn will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown zone off the coast of California near Oceanside.
And again, this is an entirely new landing location for Dragon. This is the first time a Dragon crew will be recovered on the West Coast. To prepare for these upcoming events, right now, Dragon is autonomously going through its procedures to prepare for re-entry.
One of those steps includes isolating the thermal control system fluid loops from the radiator. This system is what will help keep the internal temperature of Dragon comfortable for the crew during re-entry. Obviously, we know one of the reasons that is important is that the exterior of Dragon really heats up as the capsule begins moving through the atmosphere. That comes from 2 things, primarily. One is the friction of the actual air against the capsule, but also that the capsule is moving so fast, we're creating some compression ahead of it. So the heat shield both keeps the crew comfortable and also manages our aerodynamic approach.
There's a lot of dynamic events coming up. We did expect the deorbit burn to begin just a few minutes ago, so we are waiting for confirmation on that. But we did already complete 2 phasing burns so far for their return back home.
We've had some intermittent views here of the crew, which is looking great as they're preparing for that approach. Of course, at this point, weather is green, and we have our recovery team stationed out in the ocean, which is where Marissa was joining us. So we see it's a sunny day out on the ocean.
And we did get confirmation that the deorbit burn did begin. This burn is expected to last approximately 16 minutes. Dragon has not yet entered Earth's atmosphere just yet.
The deorbit burn is what lines the vehicle up, enters it into the atmosphere, and puts it on that final trajectory to that new landing site in California. Right now, the crew are using their screens, which we had a view of just a couple of minutes ago, to keep tabs on that burn duration, Draco thruster firings, and trajectory details like entry angle, perigee, velocity, and how much time remains until the deorbit burn termination. Dragon is flying itself, so all the crew has to do is stay strapped into their seats and keep an eye on things.
And after the deorbit burn ends, the spacecraft will initiate separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate data, power, and fluid connections between the spacecraft and the trunk. And then after that, Dragon can jettison its trunk, which is the cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft that contains the solar cells that power Dragon on its mission in low Earth orbit.
The trunk is currently connected to the aft or bottom section of the Dragon spacecraft, where that heat shield is located. So in order to expose the heat shield and get the vehicle ready for atmospheric reentry, we'll jettison or kind of kick off the trunk. Claw separation and trunk separation will happen quite quickly after the deorbit burn ends, just about a minute apart from one another.
Now, since 2019, Dragon recoveries have primarily occurred off the coast of Florida, but starting with Fram2, recovery operations will move back to the West Coast to support Dragon splashdowns off the coast of Southern California. This will ensure that Dragon's trunk, when jettisoned, will re-enter over the Pacific Ocean. Now, SpaceX engineers did some tremendous work to adjust for this, which included changing how Dragon maneuvers before deorbiting and updating the timing of when the trunk separates from the spacecraft.
On previous Dragon missions that returned to Florida, the first step in the process involved Dragon performing a slew to maneuver itself sideways. The claw, which provides data, electrical, and fluid connections between Dragon and the trunk, would then disconnect, and the trunk would be separated, exposing Dragon's heat shield for reentry. Dragon then slewed to its deorbit attitude, with its nose pointing in the direction of travel in preparation for the deorbit burn, using the 4 forward bulkhead Draco thrusters, which you've got a good view of the configuration of Dragon on your screen right there. Then after the deorbit burn, Dragon would close its nose cone and maneuver it into a heat shield first position, or the reentry attitude. Dragon then re-entered the atmosphere, deployed its parachutes, and splashed down at the selected site.
But now, Dragon will perform the deorbit burn while the trunk is still attached, ensuring its disposal over the open ocean on the same trajectory Dragon is traveling. Starting with Fram2, today, Dragon will first slew to the deorbit attitude with the nose pointed in the direction of travel. Dragon will use its forward bulkhead thrusters to perform the deorbit burn, which will last about 16 minutes, as we've been mentioning. And then the deorbit burn is what will line Dragon up for re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
Then after the deorbit burn, Dragon will disconnect from the trunk. The trunk will be jettisoned while Dragon's nose is pointed toward where we're going. This ensures that the trunk will move away from Dragon, trailing behind it. And that, of course, means that the trunk will be moving slower than Dragon and won't recontact with the capsule after separation. After that, the nose cone will cover the forward bulkhead thrusters and the cupola observation window that's been giving us those great views we've been seeing on X, helping to protect the crew during re-entry. Once the nose cone is closed, Dragon will slew or maneuver to that re-entry attitude like we've described a couple of times here, heat shield first.
And during re-entry, we will have an expected loss of communications with Dragon for about 6 minutes as Dragon passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. Nitrox is used to cool the cabin and the spacesuits to keep the crew comfortable during re-entry, which is the same type of breathable gas sometimes used in scuba diving. Now, we are expected to regain communication around 9:12 a.m. Pacific time, although the timing isn't exact. After we regain communication with Dragon, about 3 minutes will pass before the drogue parachutes deploy. These are the 2 smaller parachutes that are designed to stabilize Dragon and slow it down before the release of the main parachutes.
Then less than a minute after the drogue parachutes deploy, we'll release the 4 main parachutes. These are the big orange and white parachutes that I'm sure you've seen on previous splashdown broadcasts that further slow down the spacecraft. Over the course of 3 minutes, the drogues and the mains work together to bring the vehicle velocity from 350 miles per hour down to just about 15 miles per hour.
Yeah, very fast slowdown. Now, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, the crew is going to be heading today to near Oceanside off the coast of California. And there you can see on your screen. There are 3 sites supported by SpaceX located off the coast of Southern California, including Los Angeles, Oceanside, and San Diego. Spreading the supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize the return opportunities for Fram2 and future Dragon missions, lowering the chance we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. Now, in a wave-off scenario, Dragon would remain in orbit until the next landing attempt.
SpaceX selected primary and alternate splashdown locations, working with a lot of different variables, including what landing sites are available and have favorable weather. Dragon has the ability to execute a unique series of orbit-lowering maneuvers using those Draco thrusters to line up the ground track for each primary location, and then maintain the capability to change to alternate sites in free flight as weather constraints dictate. But as we've heard today, weather is green for that Oceanside landing. At certain milestones during the mission, the SpaceX team evaluates the forecasted weather conditions at the primary and alternate splashdown sites to make that go, no-go call for splashdown and recovery.
For return, the teams constantly monitor weather at each site. Some of the obvious no-go conditions are rain or chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of the crew inside the spacecraft, but also the recovery teams that are on the water. The SpaceX team also looks for wind speeds less than 15 feet per second or about 10 miles per hour and relatively calm seas so that we can safely execute recovery operations, which includes landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly the crew back to land, which we saw Marissa standing on.
Yeah, that's awesome. For these operations, SpaceX closely coordinates with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure both public safety and the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as, of course, the crew on board in the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices are issued to mariners in advance of and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones. We, of course, do want to stress to the public the need to respect that safety zone today.
Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any boats interfering increase risk to the astronauts in the spacecraft, the team's working to recover them from the water and the safety of those that come too close. So for the safety of the crew and your safety, we recommend you sit back and watch as we'll be bringing you updates of our astronauts coming home right here.
Now, when Dragon does re-enter the atmosphere, a sonic boom or a brief thunder-like noise may be heard as the spacecraft travels faster than the speed of sound. As a fast-moving object travels through the air, it pushes the air aside and creates a wave of pressure.
Now, generally, the only impact to those in the surrounding area of a sonic boom is the brief noise.
They're always really exciting, though, and sonic booms in spaceflight have typically been only experienced by observers on Earth when encountering vehicles designed to be reused, like SpaceX Falcon family of rockets.
Now, when the first stage booster of a Falcon rocket returns for landing, its size and speed generate multiple sonic booms heard on the ground as a double clap of thunder. Similar sonic booms were heard during the return and landing of NASA's Space Shuttle.
In each case, sonic booms mark the end of just one in a series of missions for the vehicle returning from flight. In today's case, it will announce the conclusion of our Fram2 mission,
which we're very excited about, and that's coming up with about a few minutes remaining in Dragon's deorbit burn. Let's talk about some of our first Fram2 explorers achieved while in space.
We heard some great stuff from Marissa already. I think the thing that's the most exciting to me, though, is that this is the first human spaceflight over the Earth's polar regions. With the exception of the Apollo lunar missions, the North and South poles have not been fully visible to astronauts in space.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that we've, launched so many crew members out into space, and this is the first time that this has ever happened. So we're still making history with all these different kinds of missions, which is really cool.
There's a lot of progress to be made in space, and during the mission, the crew conducted 22 different research projects.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites, actually I had a couple favorites.
It's hard to choose.
Yeah. The first X-ray in space, one of the most common tools which is used in ERs here on Earth, help diagnose health concerns, but they can also measure bone density, non-destructive hardware imaging to see why something is broken. I think that is so cool that they did pay homage to the original, very first X-ray there. You can see the comparison on your screen.
And it's amazing to think that the distance between those two images is about 130 years.
Oh, wow. That is pretty incredible. And you can see the progress just in that, just in those two images. They also performed the first exercise in Dragon, which I thought was cool.
Loved hearing about that, yeah.
On the International Space Station, they do exercise all the time. It's really important for the astronauts in space, especially for long-duration missions, to make sure that they're keeping their muscles strong as we don't have the gravity that we have here on Earth out in space. So it's really cool that they were actually able to come up with a device that helped enhance the exercise, I think that's really cool.
I think the challenge of exercise in space is going to be one of our key goals here at SpaceX as we keep working to make life interplanetary. So, of course, one of the experiments on board tested those blood flow restrictions to see if we could generate more strenuous exercise with less space and in less time, given the Dragon is a capsule designed for 4 people in this case, but can actually fly up to 7. And I also love that we get to see what the crew came up with their own kind of self-experiment, saying what can you do in this space, what makes sense, and what seems worth doing.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear, maybe I wonder if it was the same exercises. Did they do team exercises, or did they have their own individual ones that worked specifically for each person, since everybody's a little bit different? Yeah,
I'm looking forward to hearing the findings on this one for sure.
Yeah.
The next one, though, that I'm also excited to hear about is growing oyster mushrooms in space. This is the first time oyster mushrooms have been grown, but there is certainly an optimism here that mushrooms will be a perfect type of space crop. In some cases, they can double in growth every day, helping astronauts to meet their nutritional needs on long-duration space missions like those to Mars.
Yeah, with all that working out that they're going to be doing in space, they're definitely going to need some food to keep them energized. In addition to the medical research, the crew teamed up with amateur radio on the International Space Station to host From to Ham, a polar history-focused competition for the ham radio community. Now, while the crew orbited, they transmitted images of various locations mixed up as puzzle pieces. Participants from around the globe assembled the pieces to identify the location and uncover its significance to polar history.
There has been a huge emphasis on polar history for this entire mission, which is certainly not surprising given that video we saw of the crew earlier and all of their connections to Svalbard. But I'm excited to see which student teams fared the best in that ham radio competition for sure.
Yeah, I love that they came up with this idea to do this while they were out in space. I think that's so cool.
In addition, the crew brought significant artifacts from history with them to space, including a piece of the original Fram ship deck on loan from the Fram Museum in Norway, a historical medal from the collection of the German Museum of Technology in Berlin, and the Stephen Hawking Medal for Science Communication from the Starmus Festival, which recognizes the work of those helping to promote public awareness of science.
Now, I think that is pretty unbelievable, knowing how long ago that mission was, and to bring it full circle or full orbit, to bring a piece with them on this mission. I think that is so cool. Amazing.
The crew experienced about 15 to 16 orbits every day with an orbital period of about 95 minutes, which means that our crew saw approximately 15 sunrises and sunsets per day on this mission, which is a little different than your usual Arctic experience.
Right, and also a little bit different than the equatorial orbits, which are just a little bit faster than that. So I thought that was interesting that it was just a little bit longer for the orbit going in the polar direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the 16 Draco thrusters used to orient the spacecraft during the mission, including apogee, perigee maneuvers, orbit adjustment, and attitude control. There's a lot of thrusters on the Dragon vehicle that are, help them throughout the mission, but especially for them coming home, helping orient the vehicle in the directions that we need for jettisoning the trunk, as well as orienting towards the re-entry zone when they come back down to Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Dragon is doing all of this autonomously. Mm-hmm. We know that our crew is strapped in and keeping an eye on things, but Dragon really does fly itself. Each of those Draco thrusters produces 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space, which is, if you've been following along with prior webcasts, not nearly as powerful as the MVAC engine on board Stage 2, but they're doing really different things. The Draco thrusters are doing these fine-tuned kind of attitude adjustment maneuvers and obviously our deorbit burn. While the MVAC is usually what injects our payload or our astronauts into their intended orbit.
Yeah, the engines on the rocket help get them.
Dragon SpaceX, deorbit burn complete. Performance nominal. Trunk separation sequence initiated.
Dragon copy.
And we did hear just confirmation of that deorbit burn completing. Dragon is now initiating separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate data, power, and fluid connections between the spacecraft and the trunk. And then after that, Dragon will jettison its trunk, which is that cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft.
The trunk is currently connected to the aft or bottom section of the Dragon spacecraft, which is also where the heat shield is located. So in order to expose the heat shield and get the vehicle ready for atmospheric reentry, we jettison the trunk. So we'll listen in now for that milestone.
Nominal trunk jettison.
Right on schedule.
Great news.
Dragon copy, nominal trunk jettison.
Great news. We just heard that call out and confirmation that the Dragon trunk has now separated.
We always do that call and response from mission control to the crew on board too, to make sure that everybody's staying in tight communication for critical operations like this. So Dragon will now slew, which again is that careful turning maneuver, to the reentry attitude. Heat shield first, as the trunk gradually drifts further and further away from the spacecraft. Next up, Dragon's nose cone will be closed to protect the forward hatch during reentry. The crew will keep using their screens to monitor the locking of the nose cone, which is done by a set of hooks. And that is coming up here in just a couple of minutes, and we're getting some great views of our recovery ship here on your screen right now too.
And we've been talking about weather. Weather looks excellent there in the recovery zone. Dragon is also beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top off the crew's suits with cool air. This is what will allow the cabin temperature to remain comfortable while the external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty hot. The heat shield will now be pointing forward, leading the spacecraft to the landing site. These views are so incredible. Again, that is our recovery ship Shannon with the recovery team. They're patiently waiting for the Fram2 crew to make their way back home on Earth.
You could tell from that interview we did with Marissa earlier how excited they all are to welcome the crew home, hear their experiences firsthand, and obviously do some of those initial experiments right away, even as the crew exits the capsule unassisted for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure everybody that has been working with this crew, it's been a while. The mission did not just start on Monday. There's been a lot leading up to it and preparing for all the research that they've been doing, and they still have a little bit more when they get back home.
I think the thing that has been the most exciting to me following along with this mission has been watching the crew's updates over X. They have shared incredible videos, again, through that plug-and placer system. But I'm really excited to see some of the videos that they've taken, some of those like higher resolution images, given that so many of them have experience with Arctic exploration already. I can't wait to see that new vantage point that they have to share with us when they get back.
And with cinematography. And there you could see on the Dragon tracker exactly where they are passing over, looks like Antarctica there, making their way towards the Pacific Ocean. Again, they are going to be splashing down for the first time in a Dragon vehicle off the Pacific coast, or off of the West Coast in the Pacific. And I love that we have some daytime views because this looks amazing. I can't wait to see what Dragon looks like when it's coming through, back through the atmosphere and landing in a beautiful morning here in Southern California.
Of course, at this point, we are standing by for more call-outs from Mission Control and our crew as we approach that drogue chute deploy.
And the next event that we should hear potentially a call-out for is the nose cone closing. Now at this point, we've completed 2 phase burns, a deorbit burn, jettisoning the trunk, and next up we will have the nose cone closed in preparation for splashdown.
We do have confirmation from our team that nose cone close is in progress.
If you're just now joining us, you are tuning into the Fram2 mission, preparing for the Fram2 crew to splash down for the first time in a Dragon vehicle on the West Coast in the Pacific Ocean. So if you've seen a splashdown before, typically it's potentially in the Gulf of Mexico or on the Atlantic side of the Florida Panhandle. But today we have the Fram2 crew splashing down in the Pacific Ocean. That's the view that you got there on your screen.
All of SpaceX's recovery ships have been carefully tailored to our fleet of vehicle operations. So the one on your screen has been specifically designed to recover capsules from the water. Water entry helps us in a lot of different ways as we prepare for that splashdown. And this is a ship called Shannon, which is one of our key ascent milestones for our Dragon astronauts. So it's kind of a cool toast to the way all these vehicles are working together in any given operation and all the way around the Earth.
And what you're seeing on your screen is a view of Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California. We've got a crew of engineers monitoring Dragon. They've been monitoring Dragon from the beginning of their mission all the way to splashdown, and they are also patiently waiting for the crew to make their way back home.
Speaking of the beginning, here in Hawthorne, California, right behind us over here is actually the first Dragon that ever orbited the Earth. So it's wild to think that we've gone all the way from the first Dragon ever to this first polar orbiting mission with the Fram2 crew today.
Yeah, we've definitely come a very long way with the advancements, especially in reusability, which I think is incredible.
Dragon was designed from the very beginning to carry people, even though our first mission was only a cargo mission. And it's really been interesting to see Dragon's progress, both as the first private vehicle to dock with the International Space Station, first all-civilian crew. Now, of course, we've done several other missions to the ISS, both for private customers as well as for NASA astronauts. And then our free flyer missions like Fram2 today.
Yeah, and you mentioned designed from the beginning to fly people. The Dragon that you were mentioning behind us actually does have windows on it.
Yeah.
The windows are a little bit different. We have increased the size so that the crew can get a very nice view. And we did get some really cool video clips of the crew looking out the window and showing us some really awesome views from their vantage point while they were in orbit.
I also have a quick correction to what I said earlier. Shannon, the recovery vessel is named after Shannon Walker, not the recovery location. But it's cool. We're still connected to lots of different historical milestones within the space community. Of course, right now we are standing by for confirmation that nose cone closure is complete. That's one of our next critical milestones to protect their crew as we prepare for that full re-entry and splashdown.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. You know, we got a few clips here and there. It was really cool that Shun was actually able to keep posting during his entire mission. I was definitely following along, but I'm really excited to see all of the video that they were able to take of the research that they were doing.
Right.
Hopefully they were able to document all of that. We also got confirmation that the nose cone...
Dragon SpaceX, nose cone secured for entry.
SpaceX Dragon, copy.
There we've got that confirmation of closure. That's great.
Perfect timing. Next up, we'll be entering a communications blackout, which you mentioned earlier. This is going to last about 6 minutes. Now, that should begin in about 18 minutes from now.
Just in case you are just joining us, on Monday, March 31st at 9:46 p.m. Eastern, Falcon 9 launched Fram2 to a polar orbit from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, flying over Miami as well as Cuba and Panama and just west of Ecuador and Peru on their ascent to space. In fact, the crew had a great time flying over LC-39A on flight day 3. Let's take a look.
I can see our launch pad from here.
Whoa.
Do you see it?
Yeah, QS.
Yeah, but see our launch pad, Chen.
Okay, so a little video of how do you
Yes.
See our launch pad.
Yes, yes.
So you know the big exercise devices on the ISS? We're interested, you very like
This is our launch pad. Oh my god.
How cool is that?
So cool, and it was really cool to hear the reactions in real time in that video. Dragon successfully separated from...
Dragon SpaceX for entry sequence. Report when ready to copy.
SpaceX Dragon, go ahead.
Okay, Yannicka, I've got a COM blackout start time of 1606. COM blackout end time of 1613. How copy?
Dragon copy. That is a blackout time of 1606 and end time 1613. See you on the other side at 1613.
That's a good copy. With that, can you please verify tablets are secure behind the elastic bands, visors are down, and restraints are tight.
Now, we just heard that call out that we are expecting to have that blackout period that's going to last about 6 minutes at 9:06 p.m. Pacific time. And so we should expect confirmation of communication again around 9:12, 9:13 a.m. Pacific time. And the crew is preparing for that blackout period. The Corps did mention, put your visors down, make sure you're buckled in.
Yeah. Get ready to come home.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Dragon successfully separated from Falcon 9's second stage about 10 minutes after liftoff and continued on its journey.
SpaceX Dragon, all 4 crew members, tablets restrained, restraints tight, and visors down.
SpaceX copies.
And good confirmation that they're all strapped in, visors down, ready to go. Over the last 4 days, the crew have been flying over Earth in a 90-degree circular orbit, passing over the poles about every 46 minutes and 40 seconds, all while conducting research to help advance long-duration space exploration.
And Yannicka, one of our crew members on board, is a cinematographer by trade. So she has taken every possible moment to capture her experience throughout the mission. Fram2's return to Earth actually began yesterday, around when they initiated their first downhill phase burn, followed by the second downhill phase burn. Each of these events involved short firings of Dragon's Draco thrusters to lower Dragon's altitude in advance of re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Now, following these 2 burns, the crew finished out a day of research and had their last dinner on board at about 2:50 a.m. Pacific time. And just before 6 a.m. Pacific time today, the crew donned their spacesuits and made their final cabin preparations before they began the last series of operations prior to splashdown. Before our Fram2 left on their journey, we had a chance to hear what they had planned to do in space, so let's take a look. And actually, sounds like we don't have views of that, but we did hear all about the stuff from Marissa of all the research that they were able to do throughout their mission.
Yeah, a lot of historic firsts on this one. We heard about the first X-ray taken in space, first oyster mushrooms grown in space, crew-driven experimentation with exercise on board Dragon for the first time.
Yeah.
And of course, again, this is the first polar orbiting mission and our first return to a California landing site. So lots of progress being made on each of these missions. Every day we're learning something new, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of firsts. Yeah. After Dragon has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, a series of parachutes will deploy, and that'll slow down the spacecraft's final descent. Now, first will be the 2 drogue chutes, followed by the 4 main chutes to guide Dragon to its first contact with Earth since launching on March 31st.
Dragon will automatically deploy these parachutes when different pressure and positioning sensors on the spacecraft detect that they're at the right speed and altitude. Now, as a reminder, we won't have the same ground station coverage on the West Coast that we have on the East Coast, so don't expect to have all of the same views of Dragon during re-entry and landing that we're used to, but we will still have some, including great drone footage from the recovery vessel.
And we will also have telemetry and other data and should be able to bring you updates throughout. Now, during re-entry, Earth's atmosphere does most of the work slowing the vehicle down from an orbital velocity of approximately 17,500 miles per hour.
As Dragon comes through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds, the high temperatures and interactions with the atmosphere generate a plasma field around the vehicle that Dragon's heat shield protects the spacecraft from. By the time of drogue parachute deployment, Dragon will be traveling at just 300 miles per hour and at an altitude of about 18,000 feet.
That is incredible how quickly, because it's within a few minutes that happens, that we can can slow down the vehicle. Now, vehicle velocity at main chute deploy will be approximately 119 miles per hour at about 6,500 feet above the splashdown site. And vehicle velocity at splashdown will be approximately 16 miles per hour. Pretty slow and steady.
Yeah, wild to go from 17,500 to 16.
Yeah.
Of course, the crew experiences a lot of different things on return, but the highest G load that they will experience during reentry is approximately 3 to 5 Gs, which is basically the same you feel on a really good roller coaster. During their 4 days in space, where the Gs were 0, the crew got to enjoy some amazing views from Dragon's cupola, which is the largest window ever flown in space. So here's a look at the engineering that went into creating that for our crew.
When we started thinking about the cupola, it's more than just another window in space. It's an extension of the Dragon spacecraft. So when we got into concepting, it has to have the same feel and aura of the actual Dragon spacecraft.
And you are go to open the forward hatch for cupola use, and please enjoy the best view off the planet.
When the forward hatch first opens, you can look up and you see immediately that there's a large window up there with the 4 Draco shields protecting the bubbles from the Draco pulses. If you look at the videos from Inspiration 4, you can see their jaws all drop just looking out the forward hatch, not even being in the cupola.
The most notable thing to me is that it looks so simple on the outside, but the deeper you go, the more you uncover more complexities within it. There's 3 different bubbles that make up the cupola. The exterior-most bubble is our thermal bubble, which is designed to protect from micrometeorite debris that we could experience on orbit. The center bubble is the pressure pane, which holds in all the pressure. And the innermost pane is our scratch pane, designed to protect from anything that the crew inside might be doing.
It's actually made from acrylic and polycarbonate layers, but you also have technologies that are in, say, fighter aircraft that are applied to the cupola. We have a coating called indium tin oxide, which keeps the temperatures down on the inside of the cupola space. All these aspects are tested on the ground and made sure that we operate safely and that we know that when the astronauts are going up there that they have a great time. What makes this the largest window in orbit? It's just the overall size of it.
I feel like it's just so immersive, like you're inside of the bubble and you're looking out and space is literally all around you. I think the experience of having the cupola on Dragon makes it such that Dragon is the experience. Even when we fly our short duration missions to the ISS feels like the destination and the experience, whereas having the cupola on Dragon really makes Dragon and being inside the cupola the destination.
When you get into the cupola, it feels almost like you're on a spacewalk. The Earth all around you, the stars, sunrise, sunset, getting up in there and looking out is a one-of-a-kind experience.
Dragon's primary heat shield is comprised of Pika 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. First generation Pika was first developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets within our solar system.
SpaceX then partnered with NASA to develop Pika X, which was the second-gen product used on all Dragon 1 CRS missions that successfully resupplied the space station on 20 different flights. Pika 3.0 was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo, with enhanced structural and thermal properties that optimized the heat shield and drove down both cost and mass.
The remainder of the Dragon spacecraft is composed primarily of a SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection, which is lighter weight versus Pika and protects the underlying composite structure during reentry to ensure structural capabilities are maintained.
While Dragon will experience temperatures well over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit during peak reentry conditions, the characteristics of the thermal protection systems, coupled with the environmental cooling and life support system in the pressurized interior, should ensure that the crew will stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown.
And I think that's very important because 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit is pretty hot. We actually heard Sarah in the launch program talk about, Sarah and Anna talk about the almost like different colors that you see with the plasma building around it. So hopefully the Fram2 crew will get to see something cool like that. Now we also have our space suits that are custom designed for each of the crew members. We do 3D print the space suit helmet, and there you can see the suit They are flame resistant. They have a flame resistant outer layer, as well as hearing protection during ascent and reentry, as those are very loud dynamic events. The spacesuit is really an extension of the spacecraft, as it's built, just to protect the crew just as much as the capsule itself.
We obviously heard call-outs earlier that our crew was preparing by pulling their visors down. They really do that full suit up for any dynamic phase of flight. So for our Fram2 crew, that has been both launch and our reentry going on today. So right now, of course, Dragon is decreasing in its altitude as it gets closer and closer to the Pacific Ocean. But deorbit did not begin today. It actually began with 2 phasing burns, the first of which was on Friday.
Yeah.
We've got a great view on your screen right now of where Dragon is on its trajectory right there off the coast of California.
Yeah, they're getting very, very close, just a few minutes away from splashdown, really.
And you can, of course, continue to follow the crew's progress with that trajectory in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Once we reach about 100 kilometers in altitude, we will begin our entry interface, and the crew and both the capsule will begin to feel the effects of Earth's atmosphere, which are primarily lift and drag. We'll also begin flushing the nitrox into the cabin, like you mentioned earlier, topping off the suits to keep our astronauts cool. And of course, our heat shield at that point is pointing forward towards our landing site.
And we are expecting that blackout period to come up here to start in about a minute or so. And actually, it sounds like we got confirmation that we are currently in the blackout period. This is going to last about 6 minutes. Again, the reason why this is happening is because the vehicle has plasma building up all around it, which prevents us from having comms with the vehicle, but it only lasts about 6 minutes as the vehicle is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. Once we get back into the atmosphere, that plasma clears up, and it won't be so hot anymore. So at this point, we are in the communications blackout period, again, which will last about 6 minutes due to plasma formation around the spacecraft. Now, during this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible.
But as a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself and continues to autonomously use those Draco thrusters to orient itself during reentry. During reentry, the vehicle will be slowing down from an orbital velocity, which is roughly 17,500 miles per hour, all the way down to our target splashdown velocity, which is about 15 miles per hour. The top temperature Dragon is experiencing upon reentry happens during this plasma phase, and it is nearly 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Our Fram2 astronauts returning home are Mission Commander Chun Wang, Vehicle Commander Jannica Mikkelsen, Mission Specialist and Medical Officer Eric Phillips, and Mission Pilot Rabia Roga.
Just in case you are just joining us, we are wrapping up a mission that began on Monday, March 31st at 9:46 p.m. Eastern Time when Falcon 9 launched our Fram2 crew to a polar orbit from NASA Launch Complex 39A from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Dragon successfully separated from Falcon 9's second stage about 10 minutes after liftoff and continued on its planned polar journey.
Since then, the crew has been flying over Earth's polar regions while conducting loads of research to help advance long-duration space exploration and our understanding of human health in space. And they have been uploading some great updates and visuals from space, like the clips we were showing earlier and like the clips that Mission Commander Chun Wang has been posting on X.
We have also seen some incredible views from Dragon's onboard cameras, like this one from the vantage point looking at the cupola from outside of the spacecraft.
That is so incredible that they have that cupola and the space hair. I love it.
You can tell they've really been enjoying their time together up in microgravity, getting these great images here that they took of their launch site from up in space.
Yeah, that cupola view really allows all 4 of them to be able to see, out the window at all times.
Which is particularly exciting for this mission because, again, this is the first crewed polar mission, which means these Fram2 astronauts are the first astronauts since the Apollo missions to be able to see the poles of the Earth from space.
And the crew just having fun in microgravity there, taking a lot of photos and videos. This is a view from the cupola. You could see the nose cone in that view. And some nighttime views. Even at night, you get to see the Earth with all the lights that we have on Earth.
These are just incredible views, and obviously everything the crew has been sharing while they've been up in space, they've done through Starlink, and it has just been so cool to hear those first-hand accounts, see what's jumping out at them, what's been exciting to them, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more as the research findings continue once they get back home.
Yeah, what I think is so cool is that they've been able to post live while they're in space, thanks to Starlink being on board Dragon.
Yeah, talk to their families, video chat. We saw some great shots earlier of someone actually video chatting with somebody back on Earth. I just think that's an amazing, amazing leap forward for crewed spaceflight.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. We are trying to, explore space, but also how do we make space and all the exploration a little bit more closer to home on Earth? And we've got the Starlink communications to enable that. We had X-ray being brought on board, which helps with health and any emergency situations, but also research. It's really incredible how close we're starting to make the space environment closer to what it is like on home. Besides, we don't have gravity up there.
Yeah, it's been cool to see the SpaceX research program kind of take Earth to space, right? Like, how do we plan for food and exercise and all these things that will help us continue to explore space and ultimately make life multiplanetary?
Yeah, we only have really a limited time while the crew is out in space, so it's really great to see the amount of progress that you're able to make. And Fram2 has only been on this mission for just a few days, and they've been able to do 22 research experiments. That's a lot of research and data that they can advance.
And of course, we're getting views on your screen right now, our first views of the capsule on its way back to Earth. We've got a lot more trajectory information on the screen right now, so you can continue to follow along as Dragon makes its way back toward its splashdown site, which, again, just in case you're joining us a little bit later in the program, today we are splashing down off the coast of California instead of off the East Coast, which is what you've probably typically seen if you've joined us for crew recoveries in the past. Today we're targeting a touchdown just off the coast of Oceanside here in California.
Yeah, and we are expected to splash down at 9:18 a.m. Pacific time, and we are still currently in the blackout comms period, but we are expecting to come out of that any minute now. And this is the recovery zone where the vehicle will be splashing down with the recovery ship Shannon patiently waiting, as well as a couple fast boats there. A part of the recovery team, they'll first meet Dragon once it splashes down, make sure that the vehicle is safe, and then begin the recovery operations.
One of the next major milestones we're standing by for on board Dragon is the deploy of our drogue chutes. We have 2 sets of parachutes on board Dragon during reentry. The first are the drogues. We deploy those when the capsule, which we're getting great initial views on your screen. You said it earlier, but the fact that we've got these daytime views is great. So like I said, we're standing by for that drogue chute deploy. That will happen when Dragon is moving at about 350 miles per hour. Those chutes are designed specifically to be deployed.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check. Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, we have you loud and clear. How me?
We have you the same. We see a healthy flight computer. Expect automated chute deployment.
Dragon, copy.
A GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Dragon, copy.
Awesome. As you heard there, we have confirmation that we have come out of the blackout period and established comms back with the Fram2 crew as they're making their way back down to Earth, and we are expecting those drogue parachutes to deploy here. Sounds like it's on time and at the expected altitude in just about a minute or so.
Yeah, which is all great news. We heard a lot of good confirmation from Mission Control back to Dragon. So again, those drogue chutes are special in that they are smaller and lighter than our main.
Brace for drogues.
Good.
Copy. Brace for drogues.
You can see on your screen that the seats are rotating in preparation for splashdown, and the crew is bracing for the drogue parachutes. They're going to feel maybe a little bit of a jolt as the vehicle is going to slow down very quickly. And this is such an incredible view that we're seeing of Dragon because of the daytime views that we're getting here. This looks amazing.
So just ahead of the call out for drogue chute deployment, Dragon will autonomously safe the propulsion system on board and then deploy those drogue parachutes, which we just see on your screen right now. I can't get over these views today. And of course right now...
Visual on 2 healthy drogues.
Good news there from Mission Control.
Copy. We see the same. 2 healthy drogues.
And good response from our crew.
This is a view on board Dragon, looking at the drogues.
SpaceX Dragon, crew brace for mains.
Copy. Brace for mains.
And we are expecting the main parachutes to deploy here in under a minute or so.
So
wow.
Yeah, those are amazing. Right now, those drogue chutes are doing that initial slowdown, and it looks like we're getting views here of main parachute deploy.
We see visual on 4 healthy mains.
SpaceX Dragon, we see the same. 4 healthy mains.
And you can see that the main parachutes have deployed. They are expanding. Once they're fully expanded, they are going to slow the vehicle down all the way to about 16 miles per hour, right in time for splashing down into the Pacific Ocean today.
Right now, Dragon has saved all propulsion systems on board.
1,000.
Copy. 1,000 meters.
Dragon right now is also terminating the nitrox suit and cabin purges and is beginning to increase pressure in preparation for landing.
And additionally, the mission control team here in Hawthorne is reporting the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team so that they know exactly where...
800.
Where the...
Copy. 800.
Exactly where they're expected to touch down. And you are hearing those call-outs. We are confirming the altitude as the vehicle makes its way back down to Earth.
And of course, now that we've had confirmation of both drogue and main parachute deployment with these great views of our crews inside Dragon on your screen now, our next major milestone is splashdown.
Yeah, very excited with these awesome views that we're getting.
600.
600 meters.
Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable, and it provides more margin against unlikely parachute issues. Now, we had to learn how to make Dragon waterproof, but once you do, it's rinse, review, and reuse.
400.
Copy. 400.
If you're just now joining us,
Crew bracing for splashdown.
You are watching the Fram2 crew make their way back down to Earth, and amazing daytime views. I love that we got the opportunity to do this. You could see Dragon and...
200.
Copy. 200 meters and braced for splashdown.
Inside of that Dragon capsule are the 4 Fram2 crew members about to splash down here in just a few seconds. Welcome home, Fram2. We have confirmation of splashdown of the Dragon spacecraft. Dragon has returned home with the Fram2 crew. The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now start making their way to the splashdown location.
Our teams have been ready and waiting for this return about 3 nautical miles away. So it's going to take them about 30 minutes to make their way to Dragon.
That was incredible.
Dragon, Stable 1.
Copy, Stable 1. We see main chutes cut. On behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
Great confirmation there from our mission control team that we've seen main chutes cut. We do that to make sure that those main parachutes, once the capsule is safely back in the water, don't pick up any wind or drag the capsule. As we have our 3 recovery vessels, the main Shannon recovery vessel and those 2 fast boats on their way out to greet our crew.
System safety verifications are in progress. We'll report back when recovery personnel are en route.
Copy.
Pretty up-close view of the Dragon spacecraft. The Fram2 crew still inside. Welcome back to Chun, Yannicka, Eric, and Rabia after their few days in orbit, in polar orbit around the Earth. Very excited to have them back home. They're actually not done with their research experiments. They do have one more coming up, which will be exiting the Dragon capsule unassisted. Now, we have done this before, just not in Dragon, so this will be a great experiment to have for ending their 4-day mission in space.
This crew really has contributed to a tremendous number of experiments. They did 22 while on orbit, contributing to a lot of firsts, as well as continuing some longitudinal studies that have been in work for quite some time. The most notable of these was a glucose monitoring experiment, which will help us better understand how glucose performs in the body on both short and long duration space flights.
Now, we're currently just waiting for the 2 fast boats. As they're making their way to approach the vehicle, they are going to pick up those main parachutes out of the water and then approach the vehicle. Ensure that the vehicle is safe. There's no hazardous gases around the Dragon capsule, and then they'll begin starting their rigging operations to be able to pull the Dragon capsule up out of the water onto the recovery vessel.
Right now, our Fram2 astronauts are safely inside Dragon as we await for those recovery teams to arrive. Again, they have been stationed about 3 nautical miles away. And then during our final descent, our team was locking in on the precise GPS coordinates of Dragon on landing to communicate that to those recovery teams.
SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in 1 minute.
And you can see that the fast boats...
I copy, expecting personnel alongside in 1 minute.
There you can see that the fast boats are now approaching. Hence the word fast. That was pretty quick. What a view. We are in the Pacific Ocean. This is the first time Dragon has splashed down off the west coast. It's so awesome that we got daytime views of this moment here. Now the recovery team is approaching the Dragon capsule, as I mentioned earlier, they are going to try and make sure that the vehicle is safe before they begin additional recovery operations.
At this point, Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. For those of you just joining us, our mission has gone smoothly so far. Fram2 successfully splashed down off the coast of Oceanside, California in the Pacific Ocean at 9:19 a.m. Pacific.
Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle splashdown. And again, we're now awaiting Dragon's recovery.
Great views from this drone that's overseeing recovery operations at the moment. Upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically releases those main parachutes to prevent the wind from pulling the spacecraft. Dragon then automatically safes any pyrotechnics still present on board the vehicle and may automatically perform additional minor system reconfigurations.
The astronauts remain seated in their suits at this point, but the onboard air conditioning keeps temperatures in check inside the spacecraft, and the communication systems on board remain powered so the crew can continue to communicate.
SpaceX has 2 fast boats in our recovery fleet, one of which you can see just behind Dragon, and a couple others moving around at the moment, that move quickly to the splashdown point. They're being followed by Shannon, our main recovery vessel, which will move into position upwind of the spacecraft.
Now, the 2 fast boats have very specific roles. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection of the spacecraft integrity and checking for any presence of hypergolic propellant vapors, ensuring that it is safe for Shannon to approach the Dragon spacecraft.
Then once Dragon is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the spacecraft for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first. And of course, if you've seen droning in and out of the frame here, a team member of ours on a jet ski also helps to gather up the now detached parachutes.
It'll take a little over 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete their safety checks, and then once they're complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted into the recovery vessel. As part of the preparation for this lift, one member of the recovery team will climb on top of the spacecraft so that they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. It will take us less than an hour to raise Dragon to the recovery boat and for the crew to exit the spacecraft. And again, today, they will be exiting the spacecraft unassisted. And hopefully they were able to work out a lot in the last 3 days and potentially may not see much of a difference. We do know that while you're in space and you don't have gravity, you may lose some muscle mass and some bone density, but with a short trip and being able to have the workout equipment that they had, we'll see how their exiting of the spacecraft goes unassisted today.
We heard earlier in our webcast today, too, that that's not just them exiting the capsule. They're still wearing their spacesuits, obviously, and altogether the equipment that they're carrying weighs about 35 pounds, which may not sound like a lot, but after you've been up in 0 gravity for quite some time,
right.
In our case, it's been about 3.5 days for our crew.
Hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with the SpaceX flight surgeon.
Dragon copy on all and standing by for PMC with flight surgeon.
Good call-outs there that our first set of safety sweeps by that first fast boat are complete on board Dragon. Our recovery teams are now preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism on board Shannon into the water to bring the spacecraft back up onto the ship. We have an on-deck translation system known as the nest, and that's where we'll put Dragon. Dragon will then remain in the nest during crew extraction and for the journey back into port.
Dragon is currently done being inspected. We did get the go that the vehicle is safe. And you can see there on your screen the recovery team member on board Dragon attaching some lifting rings and hoists in preparation for that lift.
We're getting some great images of it here, but recovery is really a very dynamic set of operations with a lot of teams moving closely coordinated to make sure that we can get those astronauts and capsule
The
safe.
next call will be from the flight surgeon on Dragon and Ground Private.
A little more communication there from our core to our crew on board about what to expect. And obviously our teams are continuing to work here to make sure everyone is as safe as possible.
And you heard that call out that they're going to be talking on a private net. That's because they're performing medical checks with the crew to see how they're doing, how they're feeling, make sure that they're feeling okay after, again, that was a lot of dynamic events that were happening that they experienced coming back through the Earth's atmosphere. So just want to make sure that the crew is feeling okay and checking in with them.
Right now we have images on your screen of that first fast boat beginning to connect some of the lift rigging to the top of the Dragon capsule. And meanwhile, our recovery vessel Shannon is preparing to receive the Dragon on board so that we can do that egress of the crew.
Once again, if you're just now joining us, you are tuned in to the Splashdown program as Fram2 has made their way back down to Earth. 4 crew members still patiently waiting inside of the Dragon capsule that you see there on your screen. And we are currently in procedure of the recovery operations. The next milestone that we should be able to visually see will be when the Shannon recovery vessel approaches the Dragon capsule, and then we will lift the capsule up out of the water into what we call the Dragon nest on board the recovery ship. And as a reminder, we typically have previously splashed down in the Gulf and off the coast of Florida. But today, we splashed down off the west coast in the Pacific Ocean for the very first time in Dragon. And the Fram2 crew is still patiently waiting inside of the Dragon capsule there on your screen. We have Mission Commander Chun Wang, Vehicle Commander Yannicka Mick Nicholson, excuse me, our Mission Specialist Eric Phillips, and Mission Pilot Rabia Roga, completing their 4-day mission in polar orbit.
Our crew actually all met together in Svalbard, which is something that our commander, Chun Wang, shared on X while they were up in space. All of them have deep ties.
Dragon SpaceX, comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, repeat.
Com check.
SpaceX Dragon, we have you loud and clear. Tell me.
I have you loud and clear as well, and Dragon to ground is no longer private.
Dragon copy.
Some additional communication there between our crew and mission control here in Hawthorne, California. Again, all of the polar explorers on board today have deep ties to the Arctic. That's where this crew met and kind of dreamt up this mission. And now we are currently waiting for their exit from the capsule, returning as the first polar explorers from space.
Dragon, be advised, we are transitioning our forward link. COM will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
Dragon copy on COM available for approximately 5 minutes.
There you can see our recovery vessel Shannon and a view from on board the recovery ship. Now this is the deck that the crew will walk out onto when they first exit the vehicle. The Dragon capsule will be lifted at the end of the vehicle, or the recovery vessel there, into the Dragon nest, and then it'll translate forward, and there you can see the Dragon nest a little bit better there. It'll translate forward to that deck where the recovery team can open the hatch and allow the crew to exit the capsule.
We mentioned it earlier, but that circular fixture that you see at the aft end of the recovery vessel, which is at the top of your screen, is what we're referring to as the Dragon nest. That's what we'll place Dragon into, both for crew exiting or egressing the capsule, and for transition of the spacecraft all the way back to port. That's where it will stay nested until we're ready to take it off. And obviously then we bring those capsules back and prep them for future reflight, as we do with most of our vehicles here at SpaceX.
Yeah, this capsule actually flew 3 times prior to the Fram2 crew. It supported the Crew 1 mission a few years ago, which is wild to think in the past few years that we've had so many crew missions, and now today concluding a fully commercial civilian mission.
Our second, actually. Our first was onboard Inspiration 4. We've had several different free-flying missions since then. Obviously, Polaris Dawn last year, from to today. But lots of different use cases for Dragon. We see it transport NASA astronauts.
Dragon SpaceX, com check.
SpaceX Dragon, we have you loud and clear. Tell me.
Copy. I have you loud and clear as well. We have completed our forward link transition.
Dragon copy.
Good confirmation there that we're continuing that communications between mission control and from to on board. And again, we were just talking about the many different use cases for Dragon, whether it's flying NASA crew members to the International Space Station, these private first of their kind free flyer missions, or taking cargo up to the ISS as well.
Yeah, it's really cool to see kind of how this Dragon capsule has expanded through each one of the missions. Its first launch being with Crew 1 had the docking adapter on with the ISS, and then the second flight was actually Inspiration 4 with the cupola. The third flight with Polaris Dawn with the Skywalker hardware, and then back to Fram2 with the cupola again, with some of the coolest views. So.
And again, that cupola is the large domed window on the top side of Dragon. We've had it covered in the shots that we've seen of Dragon because we closed the nose cone prior to reentry. But that cupola is the largest window ever flown in space, which has enabled a lot of these great views for our crew and photos and videos that they've been sharing with us.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see more. I know that they've been taking some really awesome video and cinematography with the experience of especially Yannicka on board. And a great view there, Dragon getting very close to being lifted onto our recovery vessel Shannon in the Pacific Ocean today.
Right now, our teams are working on lowering the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism on board Shannon into the water to bring Dragon up on deck. We'll go ahead and put it in the Dragon nest we were talking about a little bit earlier there. This really is a closely coordinated effort between a lot of different teams, and we're seeing a lot of different vessels, team members, all work together in these different shots that we're getting from the drone covering recovery today.
And you can see how calm the water looks in the Pacific Ocean. That is one of the weather factors that we do monitor for a crew splashdown. And it looks very calm. Weather looks great, blue skies. I'm sure the crew will be happy to step out for the first time, get their first breath of fresh air from the Pacific Ocean and see some blue skies.
Yeah, their first experience back on Earth since they launched on March 31st from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Our crew took off from LC-39A, which is also a historic launch pad in many ways, and is the one that we most often launch from for our crewed missions here at SpaceX.
And we've mentioned this before, but as you can see on the recovery vessel, there is a helicopter pad there. That was what Marissa was standing on when we were talking with her earlier through Starlink. But the crew will be lifted on to the ship on the capsule. They'll exit, and a great view there of the nest that the capsule will be lifted and set onto. And once they complete some medical checks, they will actually get on a helicopter that will land on that helicopter pad on top of the ship and take them back to land a little bit faster than being on the ship.
Dragon SpaceX, rigging complete, approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Dragon copy, 5 minutes until capsule lift.
Request to bring cameras back on board.
SpaceX Dragon, stand by.
Copy, standing by. One other note, please be advised the ground team is working to clear the insufficient O2 for full depress caution from your board.
Dragon copy.
You may have heard those comms there, but getting very close to Dragon being lifted out of the water with that hydraulic lift system there.
Very cool to get a chance to see this recovery vessel at work, too. There are a lot of different ground and water-based support systems that go into every launch and recovery.
Brace for capsule lift.
Dragon copy, brace for capsule lift.
We also saw our iconic team member jump into the water. The Fram2 crew inside of the Dragon capsule being lifted out of the water and will be gently placed on that Dragon nest that you see there. These views are awesome. This is so cool.
In case you are
SpaceX Dragon, still requesting to stand by on cameras internal.
No problem. Cameras will remain external.
some more communication there between our crew and mission control. In case you joined us later in the webcast, this was our first recovery of a Dragon off the West Coast. So it'll be interesting to hear what our recovery teams have to say about the differences between operating on the West and East Coast. Typically, the West Coast water is a little bit colder, so we'll see what the fast boat crew members especially have to say about the difference.
Hopefully, with the warmer, sunny weather, it was a little bit warmer in the water for them.
Yeah, we had beautiful days, beautiful daytime views today of Dragon's recovery. We did splash down just off the coast of Oceanside, California, but we narrowed that selection down from 3 possible landing sites along the West Coast today. And all of that was decided in part by weather, but a lot of other different variables.
Dragon, go for cameras internal.
Copy. Taking cameras internal.
The Fram2 crew is still inside of the Dragon capsule, still patiently waiting in their seats. And that is Mission Commander Chun Wang, Vehicle Commander Yannicka McNicholson, Mission Specialist and Medical Officer Eric Phillips, and Mission Pilot Rabia Roga, waiting for that Dragon hatch to open here momentarily. Before that happens, we're going to translate the Dragon capsule over to the deck that we saw earlier, and the recovery team will then have access to the hatch and be able to open it up and allow the crew members to exit.
And Dragon cameras are back on board.
Dragon copy.
Looking good, guys.
Now, before we move forward with, there's our first first view of the crew following splashdown. Everybody looking happy, healthy? The first person to meet with the crew is actually going to be a SpaceX medical officer to continue checking on the health of the astronauts. See some fist bumps there. Everybody's happy to be home.
Welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing their final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Dragon copy. Standing by.
That's so awesome to see them so connected with each other and excited, holding hands as they, are completing the final steps of their mission, which is not quite over yet. Exiting the capsule is a part of their research. So they've got one more step to go before this mission is complete. Looks like Rabia is trying to experience what gravity is like again.
It'd be great to hear their description of having been up in space, given the wide variety of backgrounds that they brought to this mission.
Right.
Right now, we are standing by for translation of the Dragon up to the deck before opening the hatch on board Dragon. Before opening the hatch, the spacecraft's cabin pressure needs to be equalized with the outside environment, so we may hear some chatter about that as well. Once the hatch is opened, we mentioned it earlier, but that will be our crew's first breath of fresh air since boarding Falcon 9 at the start of their mission on March 31st.
The astronauts will egress from Dragon's side hatch, pending spacecraft orientation or translation to the deck on the recovery vessel.
Some more views on the left-hand side of your screen of our recovery teams interacting with the capsule, getting everything ready for that translation movement. And on the right-hand side, of course, we have the smiling faces of our Fram2.
And if you're looking at the right hand of your screen, from left to right, we have Mission Specialist and Medical Officer Eric Phillips. And then in the seat, maybe a little bit tired from the mission. In the seat next to him is the pilot, Rabia Roga. And then Vehicle Commander Yannicka McNicholson and Mission Commander Chun Wang, all patiently waiting for the Dragon capsule to translate to the deck, that Dragon hatch to open and take their first breath of fresh air back on Earth in a few days.
This crew completed just about 55 orbits of the Earth during their mission, passing over the poles roughly every 46.5 minutes.
Yeah, and just cool to just get a different perspective of Earth in the polar orbit. No crew has ever orbited that orbit before, which is so awesome that this Fram2 crew has made history. And selfies. Now it's cool that Chun is using his phone even with his gloves on. These are gloves that are made to work with displays, and it looks like it still works with your phone.
I'm excited to see that picture.
Yeah, I know.
Of course, we do have our crew visors up at this point because we are safely on board Shannon, our recovery vessel. But the space suits really are an extension of the Dragon capsule. So our crew dons them both for ascent and descent and any dynamic phases of flight on board Dragon. So we're getting these great views inside here. It looks like maybe another selfie is happening, which is great. And now that visors are up, we've got great views of all of our crew faces, smiling here, happy to be home. And looks like everybody's doing really well.
Yeah. You know, with a mission like this, you definitely have to document every moment.
Oh, and there we're seeing great visual of Dragon beginning that translation on the nest up to the deck. There's our recovery team preparing to open up the hatch. Obviously, a medical officer standing by to greet our crew. They are going to exit Dragon unassisted today, which again is one of their final experiments as a crew here. This is unique because the crew has been operating in microgravity. So what we're testing here is their coordination and their ability to transmit, or their ability to go from that zero gravity environment back to regular gravity here on Earth while wearing their roughly 35-pound spacesuit.
Right, and the reason why we're doing this type of experiment is because when we go and explore places like the moon and Mars, you might not have a recovery crew there waiting for you to help assist you. So learning and understanding, what happens to your body while you've been out in space for a while, and trying to understand, what may or may not be needed to be able to exit a spacecraft unassisted is extremely important for those type of missions in the future.
Dragon SpaceX, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Dragon copy, standing by for side hatch opening and egress.
Right now, we're just standing by for that hatch opening so that our crew can exit, which you're hearing us use the word egress. So egress the capsule and get underway with medical checks and following up with additional research, of course, seeing their families.
And there's that hatch open. What you can see there is we are putting a protective frame around the hatch for when they exit. This is important to make sure that we don't damage the suits or the vehicle as they exit the capsule. Again, this vehicle is reusable, so we want to maintain the integrity of the vehicle as well as the making sure that the crew is safe as they exit. And that specifically covers the seal of the hatch. That sealing surface is extremely important. As we've been mentioning, that hatch has been closed since Monday, since before they lifted off out into space, and this is the first time it's been reopened since then.
This was this capsule's 4th launch and splashdown. So to your point about keeping an eye on making sure everything stays ready for recovery and reuse, we're looking forward to flying this Dragon again. Few more steps here while we're standing by for the egress of our Fram2 crew out of their Dragon spacecraft.
If you're just now joining us, the Fram2 crew is made up of Mission Commander Chun Wang, Vehicle Commander Yannicka Nicholson, Mission Specialist and Medical Officer Eric Phillips, as well as Mission Pilot Rabia Roga. Currently still inside of their seats, inside of the Dragon capsule, and will soon perform their last research experiment of exiting the capsule unassisted.
Jesse, as you mentioned, this last exit here is one of our research experiments. So we actually did just see senior scientific research engineer Marissa Rosenberg enter the capsule to talk to the crew to brief this final experiment. She's been working very closely with the crew throughout their preparation for launch on all 26 of these experiments. The SpaceX research program really is geared toward experimentation that supports long-duration spaceflight. A great view of our Fram2 crew just before they exit the spacecraft. And they look very excited. They do look really happy. I think it would be hard not to be coming back from like the first polar mission, people you've known a long time, worked with before. This is a really exciting mission.
Yeah, and they've done a lot of great work, a lot of research experiments, and just got to see some of the most incredible views that most people don't get to see out of the Dragon cupola during their time in space.
Our commander, Chun Wang, actually said on X in one of his posts from Starlink while they were on board that this trajectory was designed for that reason. They wanted to be able to see the areas that they loved and called home, which people don't usually get to see from the orbits that we usually fly. So that's what really motivated this polar exploration mission.
Now, as a reminder, the crew will be exiting the spacecraft unassisted, but the recovery team is there, helping to clear some of their belongings there. But they will remove their footrest themselves, get out of their seat themselves, and exit the spacecraft themselves. On your screen closest to us is Mission Specialist and Medical Officer Eric Phillips. Next to him in the pilot seat is Mission Pilot Rabia Roga.
Looks like Rabia is the first one who's going to exit Dragon here.
Looks like Rabia was able to pull herself out of her seat, and looks like she's standing there. And removing her footrest of her specific seat. Oh, it looks like some cargo, actually. Rabia Roga was our mission pilot for the Fram2 crew. It was the first to get up out of her seat and exit the spacecraft.
This is a really big shift for our astronauts.
And
there she is.
She is standing and very happy and excited.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Mission pilot Rabia Roga of the Fram2 crew. Looks like Eric Phillips is up next. And there's Eric Phillips standing tall.
All smiles exiting Dragon. This is great.
And looks like Vehicle Commander Janneke Mikkelsen is now out of her seat. Lifting up some cargo. And there she goes. Janneke Mikkelsen. Very, very excited. And last but especially not least, Mission Commander Chun Wang will conclude this final research experiment in a few moments.
Just in case you're just joining us, the experiment that we're doing right now is watching our crew exit Dragon unassisted. The reason that's important is because when you're up in space operating in microgravity, we see some changes in bone density, muscle strength, even over a short period of time. So we're testing our crew's ability to exit the Dragon spacecraft unassisted, in no small part because in the future, either on the moon or on Mars, we may not have a recovery team there to meet our astronauts.
Especially when we go for the first time.
Again, this is our mission commander, Chun Wang, exiting Dragon.
Also reaching for some cargo. And Mission Commander Chun Wang has now exited the spacecraft. What an awesome team, awesome mission, and a diverse group of experience. Excellent mission. This was an awesome, very unique and different experience, and I can't wait to hear more from the crew and what their experience was like on orbit. Now with our Fram2 crew now safely back home on Earth and getting checked by our medical team, the crew will next be catching a helicopter flight back to shore, and soon they'll rejoin their families.
Over the past 4-day mission, Fram2 became the first human spaceflight to orbit Earth's polar regions. The crew conducted 22 research experiments while in orbit, including research studies and experiments designed to advance both human health here on Earth and during long-duration spaceflight.
And over the course of the mission, the crew achieved several firsts, including the first X-rays to be taken in space, opening the door to a vast array of clinical research and engineering applications.
Fram2 was also the first time exercise has taken place on Dragon, and the crew performed the first ever study to grow mushrooms in space, with the goal of helping astronauts meet their nutritional needs on long-duration space missions like those to Mars. And today was the first time a Dragon crew was recovered on the West Coast.
So many incredible firsts. Thank you so much for joining us this week for the Fram2 mission. And as always, make sure to check x.com/SpaceX for updates. I'm Jessie Anderson.
And I'm Ronnie Foreman. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.